Right, so this screencast is all about exporting our InDesign document, in this case our Shakespeare play, out to HTML so that we can create a website from the play. Now there are a number of things that we need to do in preparation for this process, and the first one of those is to look at our styles. Let's say, for example, take a look at scene, which has come up here automatically. Now we see under the styles panel, the paragraph styles options panel, you'll see that we have something called export tagging. Now you'll see from this particular template that we already do have this set up correctly, but we need to make sure that when we export we get the correct tag, the HTML tag, which is in this case a second level heading, H2, with a class name of scene. Now you'll see that all of this is actually fairly straightforward for most of our styles if we've used the template from before, but it's worth just having a look at some of these other ones. For example, I know that some of us may have used something called the song, and if we have a look at this we'll see that we don't have the export tagging set up. Now this is okay, we can actually change it here, but it's worth bearing in mind that under our paragraph styles panel you can actually do this globally for all styles. If we actually have a look at edit all export tags, you'll see this panel here, and I'll just expand it a bit because it actually contains the list of all of our styles and how the HTML is being exported. Now we are going to be looking at this again later on when we come to look at ebook work, but at the moment we're just exporting it as HTML. And you can see, for example, act. If you look here, that's a class name. That's H1 with a class name of act. So all of these things should be set up. It's worth just having a look to see if anything's missing. We can go to song, for example, and set that up. So with this, the song will be P for paragraph, and we want to actually provide a class name of song. So that's achieved that one. Let's just make sure that there aren't any other ones that are obviously missing. So we have, you can see, we've got verse line set up with with a style class name of verse line, and if we look at the very top, we have act. We even have something for caption and character role, etc., etc. So all of these things should be set up correctly for us. Let's just say OK to that. All right, now the next thing that we need to do is to create a table of contents for the play. Now I know we've already practiced making table of contents for the whole book, but this time we just want one for the play, and we need a space to put it. So I'm actually just going to move my title out of the way because I don't actually need that title in this particular case, because we're going to use a different method for the title in our website. So now that I've got a location for my table of contents over here, I'm going to now build that table of contents very specifically. Now we go to layout, table of contents. I'm going to make a new one, so let's actually go to the default, and we're now going to add the elements in. So let's start off with the act, add that in. Now we want to display this as we did in the book with TOCheading level 1. That's the style, but we don't need any page numbers, so just turn that off. Also make sure that the make text anchor in the source paragraph, so you actually put the link, you can potentially put the link back to this from once we've navigated to the top of an act. So that should now do that for all of these styles. Now let's go to Dramatis head, which is the style for the heading of the Dramatis Personae. I'm going to add that in. Now they need to be at the same level 1. And once again, we want that to be TOCheading 1. And we also want there to be no page number. Now we need to go for first scene, add that in. Now that needs to be at level 2. That's very important that you have that correct. And again, the style that we're using for this is going to be TOCheading 2. with no page number again. Okay, and then we just need to find scene. Now this may be different if you've used a different method for yours, but I'm going to use scene at level 2 again, same again, and this time we are using the same style as before. We want to go to TOCheading 2 and we don't want any page number. Now I'm going to save this as TOCplay. Okay to that. And now we can just drop that down here. Okay, now you can see that that's already come in as a bulleted list, and that's because my styles that I've set up already with this with these headings here, I've already set that up. This is something that you may need to do yourself. Let's just have a look at TOCheading 1, for example. TOCheading 1 is a bulleted list because it's got a list type of bullets. This is very important to make sure that your list, I should say that your TOC items are list items with bullets. Now it doesn't matter that they have bullets. Obviously we're not concerned about how this appears here. It's important what it does in the HTML, as you will see later. So make sure that both your TOCheading 1 and your TOCheading 2 are basically bulleted lists. Of course, one is nested inside the other for the acts and the scenes. Right, okay, so we're almost ready to consider how to export this out. Now, just one or two other things to do. Now, we have different items here. We've got this item here is not threaded to this, as you can see. The play is one long threaded document, or one story, as InDesign refers to it as. This is a story in itself. I've got one text box. You may have two in your case if it's longer. And now we also have a contents page, or actually a contents box. Now, there are a couple of things that we need to do to make sure that when we export this out, we get those three elements in our HTML document. The first thing to do is we need to go to our, we use something called the Articles panel, which you'll find under Window, Articles, which should currently have nothing in it at all. And the first thing we're going to do is to drag this box into that item there. Now that's going to be just simply called contents. Okay, and then we move to the next spread, and I'm going to drag my dramatis personae into that and call it dramatis. And then finally the play, which is already on this spread here, drag that also into this box and call this play. Okay, now finally, before we begin the process of exporting to HTML, we now need to set these as objects, or sections I should say. So the way that we do that is we select that object there. Now you need to go to your object styles. You may not see it over here on the right hand side in your case, but if you need to find it, it's under Window, Styles, Object Styles. Now in Object Styles you may already have certain boxes, or I should say object styles in here, but we're going to create a new one in this case, and this new one is object style 1 to begin with, and we name this contents. Now I'm not interested in the appearance of this, but the main thing is that we need to go down to the bottom of this. We need to go to export tagging for this and simply give this a tag. Now you won't find one in the list, you actually have to give it a tag of section like this with a class name of contents. Okay, now we need to do the same thing for the dramatis personae, although we already have an object style for that probably in your template. And once again, if you look at export tagging, you'll see you already have that. So I've already got it set up in my case. You just want to make sure that you do have that in yours. And now this one here, we just only have to select the first text frame in the whole play and choose play as our object style and double tap that just to make sure that again the export tagging is set up for section play. Okay, now we should be ready to go. We now should be possible for us to export this HTML. We need to just save that. File, export is where we're going to find it, and then under HTML, I've already got HTML selected in here, but you can obviously you'll need to find that in your list. HTML. Now the name of this document is the same as my InDesign document, and that's really how you probably should leave it, unless you want to rename it. But I'm putting this inside my my folder where I've got all my other assets. It doesn't really matter too much, but at the moment you can put it where you want, but you will ultimately need to put it together with your repository documents. Okay, so save this. Now this panel here is the first of several. Now the first thing we need to do is to make sure that we use the articles panel in the content order. As you can see over on the left hand side from this panel, I've still got my articles panel open, and the order is, as you can see, contents, dramatis, and then play, so that we will get it in that same order, and those items will be exported. Nothing other than those items in the articles panel will be exported. This is, just leave this as it is, so that your bullets will be mapped to unordered lists. If you're using images, I suggest that you use the original images, and that you actually change the image size to relative to text flow. That means that they can resize according to the window size. And I'd also, if I were you, go for the maximum possible quality. Under advanced, and this is actually quite important, you must make sure that include classes in HTML is actually selected. We don't want to generate the CSS actually, because we've already got a style sheet that we're going to add. So we add the style sheet that's been provided. You should find that style sheet in your repository documents. If not, we can obviously help you with that. Okay, so we're going to add that in. Okay, that should be enough. So okay to that. And then as you can see right away, we get the HTML document in its raw state. So this is the first step. Obviously what we need to do next is to edit the CSS to make that look attractive, and for the interactive table of contents to be you know, a nice navigation bar. But it does work though. If I can now go to Act 3, you'll see that takes me to Act 3.